This is reposted.
I want to start today with letting you know I think your haircut looks spectacular.
Of course you did. Of course you do.
Today's idea comes from the Purpose. Today's idea comes from the Life Purpose Institute. They have a blog about the art of giving and receiving compliments. This is very difficult for me, and I'm not sure how you are with compliments, but I think it's interesting to think about every once in a while because it's just awkward to stand there and like put yourself down. Or what do you think?
How's this hard for you? You're in Tinseltown. Don't you guys give fake compliments to each other all the time? Don't you learn how to go with the flow?
I mean, there's platitudes all the time, and you're like, "Oh yeah, thank you," but I don't know. It's weird. It's weird for receiving a compliment on something creatively that you've done. For me, has a lot more impact than, oh, hey, you did a good job with remodeling your kitchen. It looks nice. Like, I get compliments every once in a while when people say, hey, I listened to that interview you did, or hey, I listened to your show. And it's very humbling. And I just say thank you for listening to it. So what do you say to people when they talk about this show to you?
Well, you're not following the tips that we were supposed to read in this article in Life Purpose Institute, where you're supposed to ask questions back like, well, what did you like about the interview? How did it change your life?
To me, that's yeah, I maybe that's just me being uncomfortable and wanting to move on from it. But like, I do genuinely feel appreciative when people say it, but I don't like prying. Do you fire questions back at people?
Well, so here's the number one compliment I get is actually not about me. I'll be like walking around in San Francisco. There's more dogs than families. I'll be walking around with my family, and someone will go like, "Oh, you have such a beautiful family." My number one retort, and my wife hates it all, will be like, "Hey, you should just hang around us for like a night," and then you'll realize they're not that wonderful. It's like the humor deflected, but it's like the truth. Like, that's the number. And so I agree. I'm uncomfortable when people say like, "What can I do about my family?" I didn't do anything. I had some relations with my wife, and they popped out. So there's nothing I really could do. So what do you say about that? So I kind of make a joke.
Yeah, I guess something that this article talks about is being more specific when you give a compliment. So when you receive a compliment from a stranger saying, hey, you have a very nice family, you're like, oh, that's generic. But like, if Uncle Kirk's like, hey, I think you have a really nice family, you guys do an intentional job of having dinner with your family every night. Like, I feel like maybe you could receive that better. And so that is a tip, is like, if you give a broad compliment, you're more likely to get an uncomfortable person on the other end.
I agree. And I really like this idea of giving smaller compliments to people, right? And you don't like, people like getting compliments. Like, you're at the work and you see someone's coat and you're like, hey, it's a really nice looking coat. And then I love that the response to that is not it's like, hey, I got it at a consignment store. It was like the only one on this rack. It's like, I think these compliments could be like an entree to a cool discussion.
Yeah. I go on walks around my neighborhood a lot with Nicole, and there's a house that has a very well manicured lawn, and just, you can tell they put a lot of work into it. And I wanted to write them a letter and be like, hey, I walked by your house and I saw that you have a really nice lawn, and Nicole won't let me do it. She thinks it's creepy. And what do you think about that? Like, if you got a letter from a random person just because your address is listed on your house, would you be like, oh, or someone left a note on your car being like, hey, you got a nice car?
Once again, there's no universal answer to that, right? Because some people might think it's creepy and some people might be like, well, that's outstanding, right? And that's the whole thing with a compliment, right? You never know how someone's going to receive it.
Yeah. Another thing that on compliments that is kind of the same etiquette thing is for a toast. You're not supposed to toast and drink to yourself. And I'm guessing at some point at my wedding, I'm going to have to sit there and receive a toast. And that's more so than receiving a compliment. Having people sing happy birthday to me or a toast, and just receiving it is difficult. Sometimes
happy birthday is a tough one, dude. At a restaurant or something like that, I just want to like pull out a flamethrower, just burn everybody down at that point. Can I just say my favorite compliment? This is my favorite compliment. When you're like sitting at church, and then after church, like someone that you were sitting next to will see the pastor, be like, hey, pastor, that was like a really great sermon you gave. And basically the sermon's like, you need to be a better human being. Like, it's like torching this guy. It's like, that was really wonderful. And I want the pastor to be like, okay, don't tell me it was a nice sermon. Change your life. Like, I feel like that's like the ultimate, like, oh, that was such a great sermon, Pastor. Like, no, you missed the whole point. Well, you'd say, like, hey, thanks for giving that message. I think I'm going to change something about me. Like, but they don't, oh, that was so great, Pastor. Blah, blah, blah.
That's probably the person that wasn't listening. I think that's when you
Yes.
take the advice of being specific. Hey, when you talked about my life is in shambles and I drink every night, you really gave me a wake-up call. So thank you for that. Not saying, hey, nice talk. Or
That's it.
yeah, just be nice to people. So I guess work on receiving compliments and you'll be okay.
I definitely need what I took out of today's thing. I need to work on taking compliments, have it start a discussion, ask a question about it, and have it try to turn it into maybe some sort of getting off point to go deeper into something.
Yeah, that's a good way to get into a better conversation with someone rather than saying, oh, it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Oh, this old
Yeah.
thing. Oh, my 3 kids are chaos. You don't like them.
I don't even like him. I don't even like him. I live with him.
If you don't like your kids, please reach out. You can find us at Reposted Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm Andrew Keller. Larry Olson saying, thanks for stopping by.
This is Reposted.